Welcome to the Collector's Cast. I'm Clint Wilson, otherwise known as Clint the Collector. With me, as always, my cohort and partner in crime, Mike Bloski. Hello, Mike.
Hey, Clint. Hi, folks.
What are we doing today? We're going to be talking a little bit about collecting versus hoarding. Apparently, there's a difference. We're going to find out what it is, I think.
Well, I think this is going to be an interesting and touchy subject because I have friends and family close to me that will say to me, well, you're hoarding. I go, no, I'm not hoarding. I'm going to use that. It's valuable. It's something useful. No, you've got all this stuff and you're hoarding it.
See, I draw the difference very easily. To me, beautiful stuff like this old truck we've got on display today on our table. This 50s Minitoy made in Canada BA petroleum tanker. That's very collectible. How could, if you had a stack of those in a corner, even set up messy, how could you call that hoarding? You just couldn't.
You couldn't.
To me, hoarding is the absolute garbage. The old newspapers, the crumpled up paper cups and things that are just, attracting
diving
rats.
into the dumpster and pulling out broken junk.
Yeah, people do that.
Yeah,
They collect really unusable stuff. And then it almost becomes gray because how do you draw the line between what's junk and what's not?
Well, I think if you fill your house up with stuff so that it's at the point where it can no longer function as a home. Your bathroom is full, your living room is full. You can't sleep in your bedroom. You're sleeping on the floor in the living room in a pile of newspaper, like we've seen on television.
Yeah,
people do.
It's when it becomes a health problem.
Definitely, that's hoarding. I mean, that's just
when it starts to endanger your health. And now, my ex-wife used to say, "Oh, you're a hoarder. You're sick." Well, I look around at my stuff, and it's very neatly displayed. And to me, it's all great stuff. To her, it's junk, whatever. But it's organized and displayed in such a way that it's appealing to most people's eyes when they come in and see it. When you see old stacks of rotting newspapers and rats crawling over it, that's not appealing to anybody's eyes. So I think there is a definite difference between the two. But sure, go ahead.
Here's where the line gets closer. Right? Let's just say, for example, and then I'm going to go into this a little bit deeper. Our good friend Mike Hall up in the Rust Valley, he had his field of dream cars. Well, people would say, well, you're just hoarding them. There are all these cars, you got them hoarding them. And I've had people say that to me with boats. Well, you're hoarding those boats. Look, they're just sitting there. A boat sat there for 3 years. You haven't done anything with it. And I go, yeah, I haven't done anything with it yet. Because when I bought it, my intention was not, I'm going to get this boat home and I'm immediately going to start working on it like a crazy man till it's completely restored. My intention was, whoa, I've just come across this gem, this valuable or this rare boat. I'm going to take it home and it's going to sit until the time is right to restore it. And to me, there is no time limit. It's like, how long's a piece of string?
Yeah.
Or until someone comes along and offers me the right amount of money and I sell it to them. But I'm not hoarding it just to keep it forever. Or my intention is not to never do anything with it. My intention is at the right time, I will do something with it.
Yeah, very true.
But people look at that as, oh, you're just hoarding it.
Well, we think of hoarding as the what you see on TV with these, they focus on these disgusting, gross houses where people, I would say, are actually hoarders. But the word hoarding also means, you got to remember, like keeping things away from others, hoarding food, hoarding, life-giving things, items that people need. But again, there's a line there. I've been accused of being a hoarder with my bass guitars. Last episode, we did a music episode, and I showed a couple of my bass guitars here. Now, people have said in the music industry, well, those collectors that keep all those bass guitars and don't play them, they're just keeping the good stuff away from us and not letting the average Joe on a budget buy a nice bass guitar for himself because they're all being hoarded. That I'll give a little bit to them and say that's, I guess, a valid argument to a degree. But I don't just keep them all hidden away. I display them and I love them, and I do pick a lot of them up and play them. In fact, a few years ago, I took every base I had, over 30 bases, out for a picture shoot in my basement of my old house. And I made a point to pick each and every one up and spend a few minutes noodling around on the strings so I could see, yes, I do play all of these bases. And if somebody really wants one badly enough for me, they're welcome to come and try and buy it too. It's not like I have to keep them all forever. So
I,
I see a big
yeah.
difference.
I had a similar situation, Clint, here recently. I sold a boat, a vintage ski boat that meant a lot to me. I really would have liked to have kept it, but it had some really cool history behind it. Um, had at one point been owned by a water ski champion, and I let it go because it's going to a museum,
Oh, okay.
right? And uh, I thought, well, that's probably now I don't have to put in the 100 hours or so of restoration, or 200 or 300, but I was able to let it go and then felt really good about letting it go. So then I thought, well, hoarders don't feel good about letting stuff go.
No.
They get anxiety and they kind of shut down, as I've seen.
I've seen that from trying to buy people that I wouldn't call them hoarders necessarily, but who are very attached to their items, which, yeah, it's a mental, I don't want to call it a disorder, but it's a mental state that makes you want to hang on to things. And it's a type of addiction, I suppose. But I've seen, while trying to buy off of people who hang on to everything tight, if I tell them what the intention is with the item, that the perfect example is, this boat's going to a museum. That makes me feel good. I'm not even a boat collector, but man, if something's going to go to a museum and be appreciated and enjoyed by others, and let's face it, nobody's going to go into a boat museum to not look at boats. You know, they're all there to see boats. So they're going to stand there. They're going to appreciate the history and the provenance of it. You said it was used by a champion water skier. So it's not just a cool speedboat. It's got a story attached. It's got provenance. It's got history. Absolutely. A piece like that goes into a museum, and I could see why you would be willing then to part with it for a certain amount of money, because what happens to it down the road is very important. And I have people sell me stuff and say, well, at least I know it's going to a good home. And I won't bullshit people. If I'm buying something for the purpose of selling it, I'm not going to tell them I'm keeping it forever if I bought it to sell. But I will say that, it's not going to go to just any old person, whatever be. Let's use this truck for an example. These Minotoy pressed steel trucks that we have on the table here, for our audio only listeners, it's quite a large toy, well over 2 feet long. It's a tanker truck, this one, but Minotoy, a Canadian company, made various versions of semi-trucks, oil tankers, freight haulers, a bunch of different choices in different colors. And what Minotoy was very famous and well known for too is advertising. Usually the trucks had, right here we've got BA gas and oil being advertised on this particular tanker. But when they're semi-trucks, so that they always advertise Green Giant corn or Heinz ketchup or something of that nature. And being Canadian, they have English on one side and French on the other side. Now, the reason I tell you all this about these is they're very specific and they're very valuable. Some of these Minotoy trucks, whereas a Tonka of a similar year might go for $300 or $400, these might go for $2,000. In fact, most of these Minotoy trucks are worth well over $1,000 and up. And that's why people covet them so greatly, and they're not going to just let them go easily when it's something like that. But the average Minotoy collector is going to want to know that that's going to go to a good home. And I'll tell you right now, nobody's going to walk up and pay that kind of money for it and then throw it on a pile of junk. Yeah. They're going to covet it. They're going to enjoy it. They're going to display it. They're going to love it.
And I think too, Clint, that if someone is willing to let something go for a price, they're not a hoarder.
No.
And whether that price be a certain amount of money, or maybe the price of them not having it anymore is that it's going to a museum or to a better place or to someone who's going to restore, then I don't consider, no matter how much stuff that person has, I would say, well, they're not a hoarder because they're willing to let that thing go. But we do see people that are not willing to let go of things I mean, they'll hang on to a piece of wood,
Yeah.
old newspaper,
Mhm.
plastic bags, and
Because they
um,
think, oh, I might need that
they think
someday. Something
I
in their
might need
head.
that one day. And interesting that watching the show Hoarders one time, I was listening to one of the psychiatrists, and the psychiatrist said a lot of that idea in their mind stems from an insecurity that they think if they let that thing go, they'll never be able to get it again.
Mhm.
Whereas I know by letting, I'm maybe hoping that this helps somebody if that might have a
Sure.
problem with hoarding. Is listen, as much as I loved that Hydrodyne ski boat that I let go a few days ago, I know that I will at some point get a better one, or I know that I'll be able to get another one. Another one will come up. It might not be a Hydrodyne, but I'll get something else.
Mhm.
So I'm not all anxious that, oh, I'm not going to have the means, or I'm never going to be able to have that again. And that is one of the things. We're not trying to give anyone any mental health tips here or anything, but I'm just
We're
trying to
not
say
licensed
we're not
doctors.
licensed doctors.
We're
But
not learned
what
doctors.
I am saying is that don't don't be afraid that you're not going to be able to uh, get that again, or stuff comes and goes. There's
Yeah.
always, if you're in the collecting business, there's always something else around the next corner that's going to wow you,
I'll tell you
right?
myself, going back to these Minotoy trucks, when I was a young collector, just getting into it, the first one of those I ever got was a semi truck that advertises black diamond cheese. So, yes, on the French side, it says fromage. And because I'd never seen one before at that time, it was basically the rarest thing in the world to me. Now that I've been collecting toys for a long time, I've owned several Minotoys and own several now. But I did not want to let that black diamond go just because to me it felt like it was the only one in the world. And you make a good point when you're new into it and you first see that rare item, it's the only one you've ever seen. Of course, it's like a gem, it's like a shining diamond that you never want to let go out of your hand. But then as time goes on, now I have sold Minotoy trucks where I never thought I'd sell one before.
Yeah. Yeah.
I still won't sell that black diamond though because it's got a special place in my heart because of how hard
Yeah.
it was to get, and that's literally another true story. It took me over 6 months before the internet was big. It was just email off a Craigslist ad, and this was one of these guys that didn't answer his ads very often. And it took me so much haranguing and harassing to finally get a hold of him. And he wanted a lot of money for the thing. And I had to ask him, why is it this much money? And I had to learn more. But it was a real, an endeavor, a process. And the reason the guy was so slow himself to let it go was because I don't know if I talked about this on another episode. It doesn't matter. This was a fella whose brother-in-law growing up was severely physically handicapped or impaired that he couldn't go outside and play with other kids. He had a bad cerebral palsy or something of that nature, which kept him indoors most of the time. So all his toys, this guy at the time was in his 50s, all his toys from when he was a kid were in mint condition because he never took them outside, and ended up buying that truck and a bunch of other pressed steel Tonkas and things off him and did a big deal. But that's why the guy was so reluctant to let it go, because it was very special to his brother-in-law, these things. And now it's very special to me because of that story. And that's why I don't want to let it go. Not because of some hoarding mental, I don't want to call it a disorder. We're not looking down on people. But I believe that some people definitely need help with it. It's an addiction. Actual hoarding is an addiction versus collecting. Collecting gets addictive, I'll say, but it's not like a bona fide diagnosed condition. And weren't you saying a while ago that it's connected to something else? Hoarding is connected mentally to, or it's been connected to, again, not a licensed psychiatrist, but you had a fact.
I had heard, let's say, I had heard maybe on the internet that it was also the same type of triggers in your mind as as people have sexual addictions.
Hoarding and sexual addictions are connected somewhere
And
in the.
and now we're just going to move on.
Oh, we're not going to go down that rabbit
We're
hole?
not going down that rabbit hole. I want to go down this rabbit hole, though.
Not that anybody was into rabbits. What rabbit hole are we going down now, Michael?
Okay. Listen, here's what I was going to say. I sometimes have the problem. I'm going to say it's a problem that I'll see something. I'll see an old boat, and I will see in my mind what it would look like restored in its grandeur. And I sometimes disregard the 200 or 300 or 400 hours of work that might go in to restoring that, especially some of these larger wooden yachts and stuff, right? So I tend to see, well, it could be this. It could be
Potential.
the potential in it. And as I've gotten older and wiser, now I'm saying, well, wait a minute. If I really want that, maybe I'll just get one that somebody else has already done all that work to.
Let them take the financial loss.
Let them take the financial loss of time and money, and I'll have it that way.
Very, very good point you make with whether it's cars or boats or toys, just restored products in general. The time and effort put into something, rarely does the person who does the restoring see their investment back. It's just, there's no way to get that much.
No.
You can't convince somebody of what that time is worth unless they were there doing it themselves, and you'll never get it back. So the point that Michael made is, if you want to go out and buy something really nice and shiny, just go out and buy it shiny. Unless you've got this thing inside you that says, I have to be the guy. I have to puff out my chest and say, I did that myself. And some people have that, and you got to let them walk their own path and do that. But it's far more financially viable to just buy something that somebody else has put their time and effort into.
Yeah. And I'll be honest with you. Like, it's not like I'm not on some of these vintage boats. I'm not, it's not a early retirement plan. Trust me, you're kind of just exchanging dollars anyways, but at least at some point in time, you get to have it. You get to look at it. I'm kind of a mechanical guy, so I like to get inside and see what the mechanics of it were, how it was engineered, how it was built.
Mm-hmm.
Always interests me. And then, you pass it on to someone else. And, Clint, I've seen that how many times in here have we had a real cool item that you've bought? And I come in here and I go, whoa, I really like that. This thing, I love it. And then all of a sudden one day you'll come and you'll say to me, hey, I know you really like such and such, but I sold it yesterday.
Yeah.
And what do I say? I'll go,
always the same.
But then I go, well, I looked at it enough already.
And obviously I looked at it enough that I was willing to take mundane, boring old money for it.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the problem that collectors have with letting things go, is money comes and goes all the time, but these rare pieces don't. They only pop up a certain amount. And it's when you're a serious collector, you go, oh my God, I haven't seen a Minotoy tanker truck even offered for sale in months and months and months. And here one is, and it's my opportunity to buy it. And it's just, I got to buy it. But then, yeah, you're right. Once you own something a while, you've looked at it, you've enjoyed it. I feel like we're the curators or the caretakers of these items, that we don't ever really truly own them. They're sort of just with us for a time. We kind of take care of them like a foster child. We bring them into our home or into our collecting space, and we love them for an amount of time. But then somebody else says, man, I got to have that more. I've never seen a BA Minotoy tanker, even though I have now, and I've looked at this one for a long time, and they go, I got to have that. And they offer me even more than I paid, and then I got to weigh it and go, well, do I want to take mundane old money? And yeah, I've looked at that enough. I will. I'll take that mundane old money and I'll buy something even cooler. And then the hunt is on again, and I'm back to doing what I love to do.
So you really think you're just a curator for some time?
Yeah, I do for most of the stuff.
Keep that train of thought when I drive away in your 66 Pontiac. I'll say, don't worry, buddy.
Well, I didn't say that once.
You were just the curator of it for a while. I'll drive it now.
Well, the side of the coin you're missing there, though, is that, I don't just give it away when I'm done looking at it. I usually try to get more than I put into it. And going back to this truck again, I can't help but thinking one fact about it that is interesting on this particular one. And we were talking about restoration, Mike. And when you're talking about restoring boats, it's because everybody likes to look at something old, but you can't just plunk it in the water like it is, or it's going to sink. You have to make it safe again. It's just like an old car. People like that old patina look, but they got to make sure it has brakes and it starts and stops and does, the mechanical stuff. The great thing about something like a toy is, other than rolling back and forth, it really doesn't have to function. But restoration greatly affects the value when it comes to toys, because most people want to own original paint, original. And this guy here is kind of a hybrid. Somebody had an old tanker trailer and they didn't have a matching cab. So this cab is actually a restoration for this truck, while the tanker is original paint. And if you start to look closely, you can see the tanker does have some natural wear and age to it, where the truck looks like it's brand new out of the box. So that does affect the value somewhat. It's probably not the truck from that set. They get separated over the years. They get, who knows where the other half goes. But somebody took the time to put these back together. And I personally think it's great. It might not be it might not be worth as much as a all original tanker, but it's also worth more than an all restored tanker. It's kind of half and half between the two.
That's cool.
And it's something for a young collector to get into collecting. They won't have to spend as much on a completely unrestored tanker. They get kind of a half unrestored tanker here, because the youth doesn't have the same money we do.
Yes. And hey, with that, I'm going to talk about something about the youth.
Okay.
About the younger generation. Just my observation. Like if you show antiques to most younger people, they're not interested. They really are. Like, it's like, we know a couple of younger pickers,
yes,
Lyric, and that she's interested in that type of stuff. But I find that the younger generation, and this is no slight on them, they like their condo, which doesn't have a whole lot of room, their cell phone and electronics, and maybe their snowboard or longboard, and they're not as fixated on
stuff.
And I have a friend quite a bit younger than me, and I notice that her readiness to throw stuff away.
Oh,
like to just throw it away. Oh, just get rid of it. It's making a mess. Throw it away. And I know that for me, it sort of at first was a little bit annoying, but then it was like, well, I guess has a point there in making me get rid of stuff that I know I'm not going to use.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, I'm not going to use that. I'm not going to get around to that. And putting me in the mindset of, if I need it, I'll get it down the road.
Yeah, I'm a little bit like that in certain things too. But I believe now if people want to cut down hoarders and those who hoard, I'm going to go the other way and cut down minimalists and people who refuse to have anything. There are people like that just want to keep their lives so simple. They got one picture on the wall of a sailboat. Is as boring as heck. And I don't understand that side of the thing. That to me, there's extremes in both directions. Anyway, on that note, I think we're going to remind people that they can send questions to feedback@thecollectorscast.com. We'll take a short break and we'll read one of those questions when we get back.
See you soon.
And we're back. Welcome back to the Collector's Cast. Here with Clint Wilson and Mike Bloski, and we've been talking about collecting versus hoarding and the blurry lines which border between the two subjects. And we're back to take a listener question. Remember, you can reach us at feedback@thecollectorscast.com. Michael, does somebody have a question that pertains to?
Yes, it pertains to our subject. Yes, Tom Schaefer from Halifax.
Tom, hello, Tom,
hey,
and
Tom.
welcome to the show.
Hey, guys. You guys are my favorite show. Can't wait for next week's episode. I have a question about hoarding. My family does not understand that I'm a collector, and I just don't know what to do. How do I convince them that I'm a collector, not a hoarder?
Whoa.
That's a that
It shouldn't matter, but I don't know what Tom collects. He doesn't say there in the.
doesn't say.
Yeah. Well, again, we've kind of been going over that. Tom, I will say that if your family ostracizes you and your wife hates you and they all want you to move away, you might be a hoarder. But hey, again, I touched on this earlier in the show that I myself was accused of being a hoarder by not just my ex, but my kids too would say I'm a hoarder. And I'm going to go back to the old, what is it that you're collecting? Is it piles of garbage that nobody in the world wants? Can you take one thing out of your so-called hoarding pile that you're being accused of having and show it to people? And what is the reaction? Is it that's very cool? Or did they just all sort of go, I don't get it? And not that there's not legitimate collecting going on that I don't get too, because some people, Mike's daughter collects, of all things, horse bits.
Yeah.
To me, I find that about as interesting as watching paint dry, but you know what? It's Mike's little girl. She has an interest. I fully support her doing it. She probably knows that I think, is there more than one kind of horse bit, Mike? I'm imagining there's, if you couldn't collect them if there's only one kind.
Hundreds.
All for different types of riding and
different
sports.
riding, different pressure it puts on the mouth, different. It's crazy.
So yeah,
crazy
when there
amounts.
are differences within a thing like that, then it becomes collectible because, well, I don't have just this one. I've got that one, and that one, and I got all the ones that do this and all the ones that do that. So Tom, I don't want you to get discouraged. Just make sure what you're collecting is collectible, I guess. You know, old garbage and cups from McDonald's and newspapers don't count as collectible.
Let's put it this way.
I just got to interject for a second and correct myself. Not all newspapers are junk. There are some newspapers that are very collectible, especially if they've got a pertinent headline about some big event in history. Kennedy shot, Elvis died, whatever. Those newspapers are collectible. I'm just talking about stacks of rotting garbage.
Yeah. And you know, Tom, here's what I would say is that you should say to your family, hey, this stuff makes me happy. It makes me feel good. And it's what I'm interested in. And say, there isn't a timeline on when I have to get rid of it. If this is something I'm interested in, why can't I be interested in it? And now, of course, here's a little tip I might give you. If your collection of stuff is encroaching on everyone else's space in the house or making it difficult, then sometimes that becomes a problem. Let's face it. If especially if we are cohabitating with a significant other, we have to respect their space. But if that's an issue, try to keep your stuff in one spot that's your spot for the stuff. I've managed now sort of to have my stuff all in my sort of my office, my man den place. And
that's just respect.
Yeah.
You know, whatever you're collecting, Tom, if it's Hummel figurines, whatever, the wife still has to be able to get to the kitchen cupboards. You know, you can't have them all over impeding people's progress in everyday life.
But I think a big part of it is just to express to them, hey, this stuff is important to me. And it makes me happy and I enjoy doing it.
I used to say to my ex, you know, would you rather me be down at the flea market or the auction buying junk or in the bar all night getting liquored up and carousing and carrying on?
Yeah, exactly. So it's a tough one, but
well, just keep it healthy. You know, if it starts interrupting your everyday life, yeah, it may be a problem. Just like anything, you know, you got to do it within moderation so it doesn't negatively affect those around you as little as possible.
You know, sometimes there's a thing too that people get into collecting and or hoarding, and it starts affecting them in an adverse way financially.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they get obsessed with spending, and that's where sometimes people get a little bit confused. They say, just because you're obsessed with spending on something doesn't necessarily mean you're a hoarder. Sometimes you might have trouble controlling your finances or
Yeah,
right?
very true. I've been
So-
there myself. I've overspent plenty of times. Geez, I didn't mean to buy all that stuff at the auction, but nobody was holding my hand down, so it just kept popping up.
Listen, I have this thing I say to my kids all the time. Listen, when your dad's gone, there's going to be the house you guys are going to have. We have no mortgage on it. There's going to be a couple of cool boats, maybe the odd cool car. There'll be my gun collection. But listen, my plan is just as I'm dying, I've spent the last of my money. So there'll be no money.
Yes.
There'll be some stuff.
There's several ways to put that. You can't take it with you. And as our old auctioneer friend Ted Lyon says, he ain't never seen a U-Haul behind a hearse.
Yeah, no kidding.
No, that's...
Anyways, Tom,
Yes.
good luck.
I forgot we're still talking to Todd.
Yeah,
Thanks,
good luck, Tom.
Yes,
And
good luck
thanks.
convincing your family you're not a hoarder, but we believe you, sir.
We believe you.
We're
Tell them
behind
that
you.
we believe that you're not a hoarder. And
Have them watch the show and see that there are other people out there that like to amass property.
just like you. There's others just like you.
Yes, you're not alone. You're not alone, Tom. No, excellent points for Tom there. I hope I wish him well. I wish him nothing but the best. It's been a pleasure today trying to find the line between these two things. I think we could still go a lot deeper, and we will in upcoming episodes. But hopefully that spells it out a little for the people at home, that it is healthy to collect to a degree, but don't let it overtake your life. Don't let it overtake you.
Yeah, just do it because it makes you happy. And remember, it's fun and it makes you happy.
You'll know when it stops making you happy, and that's never. Well, Mike, before we close out the show and say good day to our viewers, I'm going to go to one of our most popular things we've been doing lately, and that is the trivia section. And I've got a trivia question for you today, and it's going to be multiple choice. I'll start by saying we were talking about hoarding versus collecting. Have you ever heard of the Collier brothers? Have you ever heard that name?
Yes. Is that the fellas from New York?
The grand hoarders from New York. They lived in a Harlem brownstone at, I think it was, I don't know which corner. I had it before, but anyway, it doesn't matter. New York City, they had this brownstone, and they were notorious hoarders that collected stuff. Apparently they collected musical instruments and a few different items, but they also just hoarded everything. And you want to talk newspapers and garbage, and it was everywhere in their house. They both died around the same time. And when the city workers went in there to start cleaning out, they found the one guy had died near the front of the house, but the other guy they didn't find for like a couple of weeks because he was in a back bedroom buried and surrounded by piles of newspapers. These guys had booby traps in their house set up for if anybody came in to try and take anything or to get them out of there, the piles of stuff would fall on them and crush them. Now, my question is, after the Collier brothers died, they hauled tons of stuff out of that place. Now, I'm going to ask you, what do you think the total of tons of garbage that they pulled out of this one house was after these brothers passed on? Would it be 15 tons of garbage? That's a lot of garbage. I don't know how much a garbage truck can hold, but it's got to be 10 tons or something like that. So 15 tons would be more than a garbage truck full. 30 tons of stuff. Now that's getting, I don't know how you'd fit 30 tons of stuff in a house. I'm going to throw a wild herring out there. 140 tons. So it's 15, 30, or 140 tons. How much did they pull out of the Collier brothers' house?
Well, I'm just thinking a 42-foot Chris Craft Constellation, wooden one, weighs 37,000 pounds, which would be
15 tons.
15
or so,
tons, a little bit.
Plus a bit.
So I'm thinking how much that weighs.
So two Chris
Well,
Crafts.
I want to say it's not 15 tons. 30 tons would be horrendous because that's 2 garbage trucks full.
At least.
At least. But it was a fairly big place, wasn't it?
It was a brownstone, so it's
yeah.
usually a 3-story walk up or better.
It could be the crazy number.
The 140 tons?
140 tons.
Well, you've eliminated 15, so it's either 30 or 140.
I'm going to say 140.
And you're absolutely right. 140 tons of garbage.
Unbe-
Tons! That's
Unbelievable.
That's 280,000 pounds of garbage they pulled out of that house. Now that, ladies and gentlemen,
Is hoarding.
I would say is hoarding. Yes. That's
hoarding.
gone beyond collecting and hoarding because it's infringed upon their lives. It's made it a health hazard. It's made it unlivable. The house would have been condemned in today's day and age, guaranteed. So there you go. There is a case of true hoarders.
True hoarders.
If you're not, let's say this, junior collectors out there, junior woodchucks, if you don't have 140 tons of collectibles in your house, you're probably not a hoarder yet.
That's where we'll set the bar.
Yes. And we hope you tune in next week to get more amazing facts and knowledge about collecting and all things collectible. I've been Mike. You've been Clint. Nope, backwards. You've been Mike and I've been Clint. And we've been doing the Collector's Cast.
Take care, everyone.